Well, there's a story that going to kind of make sense in just a few moments as we jump into this next section of our story with Joseph, because we've been looking at Joseph's story, but we've been looking at our own story because we've been talking about this idea of God-sized dreams. And we started that last week, and we're going to continue it because I believe, and I think the premise of this series is that God pours into the hearts of people who have God-sized hearts, God-sensitive hearts, hearts that are seeking after God, hearts that are allowing God to fill those hearts, that in that kind of heart, God gives God-sized dreams. If you weren't here last week, didn't get able to catch us online, we're going to let you play catch-up this morning. We're going to remind all of us of the foundation that we set last Sunday. I said that this is the definition of a God-sized dream. It is a holy, God-given, driving passion inside of you to do something special with your life. This is what God puts in the hearts of every person that has these, what I would call, these God-sized or God-filled hearts, a heart that is shaped after God. God puts this kind of dream in our life. And as I said, that there are certain criteria. There are criteria that need to fit this dream so that we don't chase a fantasy, so that we don't go down the wrong road, a dream that we want, that could end up not driving us, but can actually detour us or can derail our lives. And so we need to make sure that the dream that we're experiencing and we're sensing is one that God has given. And here's the criteria: that God's purpose becomes our purpose. We find our purpose because it's God's purpose for us that He delivers to us through this dream. God-sized dreams, God is always glorified. It's not about us. It's not about people, look at us, look what I'm doing, look at my accomplishments, look at my achievements. God always is glorified. Thirdly, it has to make a difference in the lives of others. It's not about us. It is about others. If it's a God-sized dream, it has a way to make an impact. Fourth, it creates satisfaction and contentment in us. We have this idea of joy and peace and contentment inside us. It does something to you when you are pursuing and seeking after this God-sized dream. And because it's God's dream and it captures your heart, it compels you to action. It compels us to action. And I said that there are some key considerations when we look at these dreams. First thing I want to say is that we don't invent these dreams. We don't make them up. We investigate them because they're God's dreams for us. We don't decide what they are. We discover and discern what they are. It is a process of investigation, of a discernment, of a discovery as God lays these dreams on our heart. And God-sized dreams are always consistent with the way you're created. God gives you dreams that fit your experiences and your talents and your temperament and your giftedness and all of the things of who you are. These dreams are consistent with that. God's dreams fit who we are. We said that God has placed in you the potential to achieve these dreams that He's given you. God places these dreams in you and gives you the potential for them to become a reality. We said that God orchestrates the events to make the dream a reality. God works out the details. If we pursue the dream because we believe it's from God, He will orchestrate the events. Now, they won't always make sense, and the road we go down may not seem like we're pursuing the dream at all, but God is in control and orchestrates the events. We said that it will take you out of your comfort zone. When you pursue these dreams, you will leave that place of comfort. A lot of people don't dream and don't pursue them because they settle. They get in that state of settled. And it'll always take you out of your comfort zone. And there will always be obstacles and opposition. We're going to talk about that second one today, about opposition to your dream. And it starts by taking small steps. It's not one giant step to pursue this dream. Often it's a series of very small steps that we take at first that happen over a long period of time before the dream becomes a reality. Now, some people are still wondering, I wonder how I would discern or discover what this God-sized dream might be in me. And I said there is this one clarifying question that if we were to ask and ponder and journal and pray over, that God might begin to place that dream on our hearts. And it's this question: what would you do with your life if there were no obstacles or opposition, where you were free from the demands and responsibilities you have, and money wasn't an issue? That's the question. That's the question we are to ask. Now, I got some great emails this week. I got emails from some of you who said, you know what, I have been pursuing this dream, and you're right. Keep pushing this forward because it's great. And we say all that you're saying so far, yes, we can affirm it. Others have said, well, we had the dream in the past and we sensed it, but we did nothing with it. We either resisted it or it never became a reality, or we ignored it, or we kind of buried it or said, it won't happen to us, it can't happen to us. Our circumstances aren't working. They're not the right circumstances or the right time to follow this kind of dream. But you said, but now I sense, even after last week, that God is reigniting that little dream that is inside of me. Some of you shared that you had the dream of starting a business. Somebody shared about possibly fostering a child. Another shared about going back to school and getting a degree. Some of you said, someone said to me, wrote and said, I really have this idea of being a consultant in the business that I'm currently part of. And there were a few other things that people sent, and they were really kind of cool, where those dreams were all about. And yet, it would be easy, and I got this from a couple of people, it would be easy to say, well, I don't have any God-sized dreams, or if I did, I don't think they're God-sized dreams because they're not big dreams. And I need to correct that. The size of the dream doesn't determine if it's a God-sized dream. It doesn't. Some are big and they'll appear like they're huge, and others won't. But they're still God's dreams for you. Sometimes it's to be the best mom, to have the impact on your children so they can do some awesome things. Or maybe it's the best employee so that you can influence your workplace. Or maybe it is to be the best business owner so that you can impact others and bring glory to God. Or maybe it's just to be a great wage earner so that you can give to God's vision and the dreams of others. Don't miss the dream because you're confused by the size of it, because the size doesn't determine whether it's God-sized or not. And some dreams may not even seem like dreams because they're very practical. And yet practical dreams are also God-sized dreams, very practical. Maybe it's the idea of retiring debt or paying off your mortgage so that you can be more generous. Or maybe it's adding a degree to open new doors to your education. Or maybe you're dealing finally with an addiction or a compulsive behavior. Or maybe it's a job change so that you can have less time at work and more time with family and more time serving the greater community. Or maybe, it's just something simple or something very easy. And you think, shouldn't they be complex? No, they don't necessarily have to be big, and they don't need to be complex. But here's what was true by a bunch of you that I talked to. When it comes to dreaming, you can't even think about it. Because right now you feel so overwhelmed with life, so many deadlines, so many demands, job, family, whatever. Or you feel like what's going on in my life right now, maybe there's a challenge within a marriage or challenge with your kids, or there's other real life challenges, and you think, I can't dream right now. Some of you feel so overloaded and so overwhelmed with life, you think, I can't dream. Yes, you can. You might not be able to pursue that dream right now. You may not be able to put steps in place, but God often will give us a dream that is for the future, but He gives it to us in the present. And for those of you who feel overwhelmed, like you can't dream right now, let me encourage you to continue to discern and discover what dream God might have for you. Don't get buried in the details. Refrain from trying to put all the plans and steps together. Just leave that for now. Because sometimes we cannot sidestep what's going on in our lives to take hold of or pursue a dream. And yet God still gives us that dream. He gives it to us now. Maybe it's not today. Maybe there's weeks or months or years before you'll be able to pursue it, but still discern it and discover what it is. You know, we looked at the story of two dreamers. My own story is God moved me from the marketplace into ministry a number of years ago. But we also looked at Joseph, the guy that wore the fancy coat, the ornate coat. We're not sure it had colors or not, but that's the way it's been portrayed down through history. And we looked at these two dreamers. I mean, when you think of Joseph's dream, you need to understand that it took 20 years for that dream to become a reality. And there were demands that he had, and there were derailments and detours and delays along the way. It happens. They don't always happen quickly, and we need to learn to be patient with God as He works out His dream for our lives in us. Sometimes God actually uses the challenges and the struggles and the demands of life to draw us closer to Him, to deal with an issue of character that needs to be dealt with. Sometimes, you know, he wants us to learn some lessons or develop a heart that is more sensitive to His voice. Sometimes He'll bring circumstances to get us there, which is better going to prepare us when the dream can become a reality. When God dropped His dream in my lap in 1992, I had 3 kids, all under 9. I had invested big time in a company. I had a boatload of debt. I had just come through a season of overwhelming anxiety and discouragement, huge demands in the workplace, big demands at home. There were demands in the church that I was attending. It was one of the busiest times of my life, and I could have said, it makes no sense to dream, but God still planted that dream. And the one thing that I discovered is that God not only planted that dream, but He gave ways for me to discern that it was His dream through some of the circumstances that He used to affirm that. And then He affirmed it in numerous ways. And yet it actually took more than 2 years for me to take some of those initial steps towards that dream. God planted it. Some things needed to happen. Real life had to be rearranged in order for that to happen. As I said last week too, and let me just finish with this as sort of a review and where we've been, is that age doesn't get in the way of dreams. For those of you who are approaching retirement thinking, I can stop dreaming now, think again. If you want to talk about old dreamers in the Bible, you just need to have to look to Abraham. He was 70-some years old when God said, by the way, buddy, big dream. You and your wife are going to have a child. He probably went, really? And that child is going to be the foundation for a great nation, and out of you is going to be a blessing that will come upon this world. It was an enormous dream. The guy was 70. So you don't get off because you're ready to retire. In fact, you probably got more time than ever. Now, what I want all of us to continue to do is try to find clarity, discernment, and discovery. Here's what I know is true, though. And all dreamers know this to be true. When you begin to pursue it, when you begin to talk about it, when you begin to share it with others, you will find that you will encounter opposition to the dream. You will. All dreamers experience it. And it'll come from a couple of sources. And I kind of want to look at those sources, but I just need to say this. You're going to experience opposition. You really are. Sometimes it'll be mild, sometimes it'll be moderate, sometimes it'll be downright intense. But you will experience opposition to your dreams because it happens to all dreamers. Every person that pursues these God-sized dreams will encounter opposition, and it'll come from 2 sources. The first source is it'll be those who are close to you. It will be those who are close to you. It might be a parent, a spouse, a friend, a coworker, boss, sibling, someone you respect, someone you care for, someone you appreciate their perspective, a key part of your relational world. I mean, it happened to me when I started to share this dream. I had all sorts of opposition. I went to people in my workplace, and they're saying, David, you're tossing away all that you've achieved, all that you've worked for, all that you've accomplished. You're tossing it away for something that they consider, because it was a God-sized dream and they didn't have God-filled hearts. They thought I was tossing it away for something that was much lesser. The leader of my small group and some of the members of my small group at the time said to me, are you sure? In fact, one of them said those words to me, I don't think the world needs another professional Christian. And there was all sorts of things that they said that I thought, should I pursue this dream? My parents, especially my dad, were opposed to this dream, and my dad was a pastor. You'd think he would have jumped up and down saying, yes, I've wanted this for you, and I think he did, but then somehow he didn't really affirm the dream. He opposed it, and maybe there were things about ministry that he knew that I would later find out to be true, and he would have been right, and he wanted to prevent me from experiencing that. I don't know. But I'm here to tell you the greatest blessing that I experienced in that time is that my wife fully supported the dream. I had all of these other people opposing, but she didn't. And it was going to disrupt her life more than anybody else. And yet she supported me significantly, and she was a big part of me pursuing that dream. I think she had a sense that it was coming and that it was happening and that we would, whatever it played out, she didn't know, but she was supportive, and I would have not been able to pursue it without that. And I believe that God was the one that made all that work. You see, as dreams develop, opposition occurs. It happened to Joseph, right? We left off his story last week. It said, his brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? He's just shared dream number one, that they're all going to bow down to him. Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream. And what he said, they weren't really keen. They were ready to oppose him. It goes on. Then he had another dream, and he told his brothers, listen, I had another one, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. And now his dad said to him, when he told him, and his father rebuked him, that word is very strong, kind of took him to task and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come down and bow down to the ground before you? Will they bow down? So dad's not too happy. He's opposing. The brothers aren't too happy. And if we follow the story, it gets worse. Jacob, Israel, his name was changed to Israel eventually. He sends Joseph out to see how the brothers are doing, to see how the flocks are going, to take some needed supplies. And so Joseph kind of goes on this little bit of a meandering journey, and eventually finds out where his brothers are. And as he gets close to them, he's not too far away. Look at here's his opposition. Here's the brothers. Here comes the dreamer, they said. Come now, and let us kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns, just kind of a dry well, and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of it. They not only wanted to kill the dream, they wanted to kill the dreamer. These are a nice family. You got to understand that, They just wanted to kill the brother. They wanted the dream dealt with, and they wanted to take some pretty severe measures. Now, they modify their approach. Cooler heads prevail. I think a couple of the older brothers, kind of came to their senses, and it says this. Hello. Okay, well, let's read. I can read. It says they came to their senses, and this is what they said, verses, we there now? Oh, yeah, okay, we got her. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Now, let's not put the dreamer to death. However, let's deal with the dream. Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother and our flesh and blood. And they all agreed. They said, okay, we don't want to kill the dreamer. Let's not go that far. That's a little crazy, but we want to distance ourselves, so let's sell him into slavery. He's going to go a long way away, and we will never have to hear about this dream again. Now, here's what I want to say. Most opposition will not be this intense when you share this dream. However, I don't know all of your families, but I doubt it's going to be this. You're not going to likely be put to death. However, they may want to destroy or put to death your dream or distance themselves from you. And in some circles, some people can face some pretty intense opposition. A woman a number of years ago shared with me a dream that she had, and it was a wonderful opportunity, and she shared it with her husband, and she was excited as she shared it with him. And his response is, there is no way that's going to happen. You don't have the ability, we don't have the money, and it would be a waste of money. And if you pursue this dream, you and I are done. That's pretty intense opposition. But Joseph faces this, like all of us who dream, who chase a God-sized dream. This intensity comes in different sizes and different shapes. So how do we handle this? How do we handle this? Because the easy thing at some points when we feel this opposition is to go, okay, I'm done with the dream. I'm not putting up with this. I can't handle it. These are people I love. They're standing against me. I'm giving up. That's not the way to deal with it. But there is a way to deal with it, and the first one is this. Confirm this is truly a God-sized dream, because their opposition may say to you, maybe it's not. Maybe you need to run through the criteria again. Is it fit the criteria? Is it God's purpose? Is God getting the glory? Will it make a difference? How am I feeling inside? Has it captured my heart? Maybe you have to look at the circumstances. Maybe you have to seek out wise counsel. But you need to confirm, is it a God-sized dream? Because that's so important to moving forward. Yes, it is, or no, it's not. Secondly, you need to understand what's creating or causing this. And there are a number of factors. Sometimes it's because the people who listen to your dream and who are close to you care deeply about you. They oppose you. They mean well. Their intentions are good because they don't want you hurt. They don't want you discouraged. They don't want you disappointed. They don't want you to fail. And because they care enough about you, they're going to kind of oppose the dream. Sometimes it's fear. When you share your dream, it instills all sorts of fear in them. The fear of losing the familiar, fear of losing security, of losing you, fear of the unknown, what changes it'll bring, the future or failure. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's going to take them out of their comfort zone, because here's the reality. Sometimes when you're willing to step out of your comfort zone, it's going to take other people outside of their comfort zone. You share this dream, and they immediately start to begin to think in their head, what will this mean? What will it do? What will it cause? What will it create? Because some dreams come with tangible, calculable costs. If you're married, sometimes it could be the reduction in family income, and you've got mortgages and car payments and so on. Maybe it means downsizing and doing without. Maybe it's about relocation or radically different hours that you might have to work. And so for some, it's just going to take them out of their comfort zone, so their discomfort creates opposition. Or maybe it's an obstacle to them reaching their goals. This was Joseph's deal. You see, Joseph's older brothers should have had the coat. Joseph's older brothers should have been loved by dad. Joseph's older brothers should have had that dream where the rest of the brothers would bow down to them. That was called the rights of the firstborn. They should have had all of that, but it was apparent that Joseph's dream was going to mean that they didn't and he would, and it kind of stood opposed to what they thought, what they believed, what they dreamed. Here's one thing I know for sure. If you have an opposing dream to someone who is close to you, both of you need to check which dream is of God, because God would never put two opposing dreams in the same relational circle. So if it's not complementary and it's opposing, one of you may not be chasing a God-sized dream. And then like Joseph's brothers, it could be envy, right? They were envious of him. He was going to get to fulfill his dream, and they weren't, and they hated him. And sometimes it's just that. People just feel jealous. Opposition comes often through jealousy. So sometimes we just need to know what's creating or causing it. Sometimes we need to ask some key questions. Questions like this: is there any merit to their concerns? Maybe this will help redefine or define or more clearly define your dream, because there are concerns and there are merit to it. Have you communicated the dream clearly? Because that's a question you might want to ask, is saying, I thought I had, but they're not getting it, and maybe it's not clear. Or, this is a big one. Is it a problem with you or with the dream? This is Joseph's deal. The problem wasn't with the dream that God had given him. They hated the dreamer before he got the dream. And sometimes we think, well, the problem is with the dream, and we need to understand maybe it's with us, and maybe we need to go back and check the relationship with these people who are opposed to us. Is there a relational issue that needs to be managed or sorted out first? But it's working through these questions and asking yourself, are these true? Be patient. Just be patient with your opposition. Remember, you've been thinking about this for a while. You've been planning it. The steps start to flow into your head. God laid it on your heart. A lot of times we don't share it while we're discerning it, and that's a good thing. We need to be careful that, we process it before we pronounce it. But then you're ready to say something about it, and you're way ahead of them, and they're not catching up, and they get all sort of frustrated because of the fear or the comfort zone or whatever. This is a time where conversation and communication has to be wide open, and it has to be honest, and it has to be patient, and it has to be loving. There's no time to be arrogant or demanding. It's time to be patient. Because over time, here's what I found. When you're patient with those who oppose you, there are times where they'll come around and they'll get it. Most of the people who opposed me in some way eventually came around and said, yeah, we're going to high-five this direction. But it took some time, and so we need to be patient. And then the last one, this is a little bit of a funny one, but it's so important when you're dreaming and you have opposition. Find a dream buddy. This is just someone who cares for you, is not directly connected to you, is not going to lose very much as you pursue your dream. They won't come out of their comfort zone. There's no fear. We need these people who will speak truth into us, who will help clarify and define our dreams. They'll help us to manage the process of opposition. They'll speak truth into our lives. They'll keep the motivation kind of going. We can be accountable. I think Joseph had this. He had this with one of his brothers. It says this in Genesis 37, 21 to 22. Reuben heard this, and he tried to rescue him from their hands when they wanted to kill him. Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood. Throw him in the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him later and take him back to the father. See, Reuben was his dream buddy, and which is interesting because Reuben was one of the oldest, and he had the most to lose. And we need those dream buddies. I had that. I was so blessed. His name was Scott. He's a great friend, the founder of Goodness Me. And Scott was one of my best friends, and he walked with me, and he encouraged me, and he helped clarify. And when others were opposing or saying things, he helped me to work through that. And it made a huge difference. It made a huge difference. It really did. And so I'm just saying, sometimes we just need this person. And so we have this where people who are close to us can be opposed to us, but there's another opposition, and I need to speak on this one, and I need you to really grab this one with me. The second opposition might be the biggest opposition at all, because not only will it oppose you, but it will put the thoughts and some of the ideas in the hearts of those who oppose you, because there is one who opposes all God-sized dreams. It is the evil one. It is the great enemy of God. And he does not want you to pursue a God-sized dream. The evil one, he cringes at the criteria. He cringes that you would find purpose and direction and meaning in your life. He doesn't want that for you. He cringes that God gets the glory. He gets glory when your life gets wrecked and your life is meaningless and your life is a mess. That's where he gets glory. He doesn't want God to get the glory. He doesn't want people to be impacted. He wants people destroyed. He doesn't want you to be satisfied or content. He wants you discouraged, depressed, disillusioned, and discontent. And what he does is he puts certain things in our pathway that can detour or derail or even destroy the dreams. I think sometimes it's the result of choices we make can get in the way, or sometimes he fuels the ideas and the actions of others. Sometimes I think this is his weapon today. I think it's his weapon in more than just dreams. I think his big weapon today is he's just keeping people too busy, too overwhelmed, too occupied with too many things. He's got people exhausted and fried out and burned out. And I think that's what he does to dreamers. He kind of keeps us that way. But I think his greatest weapon of all is, there's two of them. And the first one is this. It's opposition through temptation. You see, I believe Joseph is kind of a prototype or a prophetic picture of Jesus. Think about Joseph and Jesus. Joseph was the object of his father's love. He was mocked by his family, sold for pieces of silver, stripped of his robe, delivered over to non-Jews for punishment. He was falsely accused, and yet the blessing of God was upon him. He suffered significantly. He fed the hungry people bread. People eventually bowed down before him, and he was God's plan for salvation for his people. There's a lot of similarities between Joseph and Jesus. It's like he's this prophetic picture, this prototype of one who is to come. And in the next section of the story, Joseph faces an enormous temptation. Now, it's a real person, flesh and blood person, but I believe that person is also the embodiment or symbolic or prophetic of the evil one and the way the evil one tempts us. It says in Genesis chapter 39, verse 1, now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. We don't know how much time had taken place, but he's been taken down to Egypt, and he learns the language, and he becomes, he develops character and leadership principles, and he's selected by Potiphar, an Egyptian who is one of Pharaoh's officials. This is kind of a government official, the captain of the guard, and he brought him from the Ishmaelites, and he took him there to his home. And we see that Joseph is finding his way to this, and you can see God orchestrating the details. And it says the Lord was with Joseph. This is it. I said this last week. No matter where the detours go, even when the dream seems derailed or not making sense, God's with you. And God was with Joseph so that he prospered and he lived in the house of the Egyptian master. God was with him. And when his master saw, I love this, Joseph lived a life of integrity, a life where God was number one, where his master, who wasn't even a follower of Yahweh, saw the Lord. Yahweh was with him, and the Lord gave him success in everything he did. Joseph lived a life that others noticed as he pursued this dream. And Joseph found favor in Potiphar's eyes and became his attendant. And Potiphar put him in charge of his household and entrusted him to his care, everything he owned. And from the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed that household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. See, when we follow our dreams, others get blessed. And the blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. And we just see that Joseph is blessed. God provides everything for the dream. But then comes the temptation. Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. He had someone else to do that because the food tasters often died, and I don't think he wanted that of Joseph. Now, Joseph was, he struggled with a curse that many of us are struggling with. Now, Joseph was well-built and handsome. I know the curse. Whatever. And it says this, after a while, his master's wife, Potiphar's wife, took notice of Joseph, and she's not as subtle in her temptation. She just says, hey, come to bed with me, big boy. That's right there before that there. And she's, and think of Joseph. He's away from home. Nobody will know. She's a beautiful Egyptian woman. All the opportunity not to get caught. He's a young man in his early 20s. Why not? Why not? But this is the temptation. And this is what the evil one does when we're pursuing dreams. He brings temptation right before us. Right before us. And I believe if Joseph had have said yes to her, he doesn't. But if he had have said yes to her, his story in Scripture is done. Yeah, God's going to rescue the nation Israel. God's going to sort out everything that needs to be sorted out. Nothing thwarts the plan of God, except Joseph would have been done. But Joseph is not done because it says he refused. These are two powerful words. He refused. He said, and here's why he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he is entrusted to my care. What is he saying? If I choose to do this, I'm going to hurt somebody who's close to me. I give in to temptation, and this so often happens. We give in to temptation, and it hurts someone who is close to us. He says, no one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you because you're his wife. He says, how could I do that to hurt my master? But he also says, how could I sin against God? Because this is going to do something to the dream, derail the dream, something to do with God. This is going to hurt the reputation of God. You see, Joseph in that household, God was visible through him. This would have hurt that, and it would have hurt the reputation of God. And I think this is how all of us get tempted. When we're pursuing these dreams, it might be to relapse to an addiction or get really busy or some sort of sensual temptation or, climb into the wrong bed or seek your own glory or, achieve for your own reward or whatever. It might be some shortcut to achieving the dream. Jesus faced the same temptation. Jesus is just baptized and he hears these words. This is my son, whom I love, who I am well pleased. God speaks that of Jesus. And what's ahead of Jesus is the dream God has for him, to live a life of being perfectly human so we would know what that looks like, to teach life-changing principles, to heal and to care, to die for our sin and to rise again. That was the dream. And when this is all unfolding, the evil one comes to Jesus. And he says these words in Matthew 4. The tempter came and said, if you're the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Jesus had fasted for 40 days. He's pretty hungry. There's lots of stones. And he says, turn them to bread. What is the temptation here? It is self-reliance. I don't need God to provide. I can do it myself. That happens to a lot of dreamers. Eventually they think, I can make the dream a reality. Second temptation, it says, if you're the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. In other words, he's saying you could be spectacular by taking a shortcut. You can be spectacular. You throw yourself down. You don't have to go through all this teaching and all this and dying on the cross for people to know you're the Messiah. Just let's go to the temple. Let's jump down. The angels will come. Everybody will go, whoa, look at him. The temptation to be spectacular and take a shortcut. The third temptation Jesus faced, and the devil took him to a very high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and said, all this I will give you. Here's the crazy thing. Jesus already knew he was going to get that. But he says, I'll give you this. What? If you bow down and worship. This is the idea to be superior through a shortcut. One is self-reliance shortcut. One is the superior shortcut. And the other is the spectacular shortcut. They're all shortcuts to the dream. That's what it's all about. You see, both Joseph and Jesus refused. Why? Why did they refuse? Because they minimized how good it was going to be to give in, and they maximized the consequences. When we stand at temptation door, we need to minimize how good it's going to be, because it's never going to be near as good as we think it is, and we need to maximize the consequences because it's always going to be worse. But temptations don't just stop with one refusal, and we need to refuse. It says this, the Lord was with him. Let's go back one more slide. One day he went into the house, and none of his household servants resided. And she came, caught him by the cloak, and said, come to bed with me. She did this over and over and over again. And there's no relentless temptation. He leaves his cloak. And then there's the second way that tempter comes and tries to mess us up, and it's lies. Accusations. That's what she does. She lies about him. She lies about him. She says things like, he attacked me, he sexually abused me, he hurt me, he wounded me. She tells her husband, tears running down her eyes. She makes all these stories, all these lies. Sometimes that's how the evil one does. He creates lies in our thinking. Lies we tell ourselves, like we're not worthy, we don't have what it takes. Lies about doubts and fears. Lies that say, this is impossible. Comfort zone is better than stepping out of it. It's opposition through lies, and it happens to all of us. But Joseph could have said, I'm done. He's back in jail. See, Potiphar didn't believe his wife. Do you know that? He didn't believe her. He knew what she's like. Because he would have put Joseph to death if he believed her. He puts him in jail to save his face, his wife's face, and Joseph's life. And Joseph could have been there in jail again going, I'm done, God. I keep pursuing the dream, and I keep getting tossed into prison or pits. Like, I'm kind of done. Look what happens. The Lord was with him. What else is new? It's the story of all dreamers. He showed kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put him in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. And the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because what? The Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. He could have gone into prison and given up, but he knew the dream, and he didn't give up just because something detoured it or something was going to delay it. And I just want to remind us as we close of just one phrase. Whether you're dreaming right now, whether you're in the middle of something that is neck deep and it's dark and it's hard and there's not hope, you feel like you're in the pit or in the prison, whatever it is, I want to remind you of one thing. Just one thing. And I pray that the Holy Spirit will take this thought and put it to your emotions that are just raging right now because of the hurt and the fear and all that you're going through and the lack of hope that you are experiencing. This one phrase: God is with you. God is with you. No matter what you're going through today, God is with you. God is with you. And I want to pray as we close with those kind of thoughts. And I don't do this very often, and I don't know where you might lie on this, but yesterday as I was preparing this message, God put a prayer on my heart for all of us today. And so we're going to pray that prayer. I'm going to just read it because God gave it to me, and I believe it's our prayer for today. And I just pray as I pray it, that you listen to these words. Listen to these words, whether you're pursuing a dream or just overwhelmed with life. Listen to these words. Let me pray. Dear Lord, may we hear the truth of your word that will set us free from the things that are keeping us captive. May we pursue your purpose and plan for our lives. May you get the glory and not us. May we live lives of purity, not giving in to temptation that can hurt us and others and you. May we know you live for us. The power that you have placed in us is the power of the resurrection. There is no greater power. And may we grasp your dreams for us. Carefully begin to pursue them, being sensitive to those who are around us and might oppose us. May we know your grace so that we can face anything that comes our way today or this week. May we fully experience your grace for us. We bring our hurts and frustrations and struggles to you. May we know your presence in us, the peace and joy that comes from being in that presence, knowing that no matter what we face right now, your power in us is greater. And may we hear you whisper to all of us today, no matter what we're going through, may we hear you whisper, I am with you. May we hear you say that to us, I am with you. And may the simple but powerful truth of those words, I am with you, strengthen our hearts and allow us to tenaciously move forward in faith in spite of the opposition, the fear, and the doubt. May you speak to us, O Lord. May we have ears to hear those simple words. I am with you. And we pray